The wind cut across the open plains like a blade, lifting swirls of dust from the earth and scattering them across the bones of what had once been a wagon road. Overhead, crows circled low and lazy in the heat. The only man for miles rode alone, reins slack in his gloved hands, revolver low on his hip. Jacob Hawthorne hadn't spoken in days. His mouth was dry from the sun, but it wasn't thirst that made him quiet. Words had never done him much good. He rounded the hill just past noon, his horse snorting against the breeze, and saw it then, wood slats nailed together to form a stagecoach stop, crooked and empty, with a tilted bench nailed to one side. A single rusted sign creaked in the wind. Beneath it, like a thrown doll, was a figure. He tugged the reins and dismounted. She lay motionless, her dress dusty and torn. Pale hands curled loosely over a leather bag. Her hat had blown several feet away, hair tangled and matted. Blood smeared her sleeve, dried but not old. Jacob knelt beside her, casting a long shadow over her face. She was young, early 20s maybe, but the lines of war and survival had aged her eyes, even behind closed lid. He looked for breath, for movement, for a heartbeat. It was there. Barely. He took a deep breath and looked around. No wagon. No horses. No tracks he could trust. Just the echo of violence. "You're coming with me," he muttered, lifting her in his arms. She didn't stir. Jacob laid her across his saddle, mounted behind her, and rode out into the hills, toward the place he swore never to return to, an old trapper's cabin in the foothills where silence had lived longer than any man. By the time they reached it, the sky had begun to bruise. He carried her inside, cleared the dust from the single cot, and laid her down. She moaned once, something small and guttural. She was alive. He fetched water, tore strips from a shirt, cleaned her wounds, one gash across the ribs, a bruise to the temple, and rope burns on her wrists. Whoever had ambushed her, they'd meant her no good. He worked in silence, fingers steady but careful. There was a gentleness buried in the harshness of him, a relic of a man long buried. He sat beside the fire after sunset, watching the flames eat wood like hunger. She hadn't woken. He glanced at the worn leather bag she clutched even in unconsciousness. Curiosity tugged at him. He opened it. Inside, gauze, rolled bandages, dried herbs, a small folded paper with military stamp. A field nurse. From the war. He found a locket tucked in a side pocket. Inside, a photograph of two girls, one older, one barely 8. The younger's eyes were like the woman's. He closed it, returned everything untouched. "Who were you trying to save out here?" he asked aloud, but only the fire cracked in response. She woke near dawn with a gasp like surfacing from drowning. Jacob was seated across from her, cleaning a knife with methodical care. He didn't move. She blinked, staring at the rafters, then down at herself, registering the bandages. Then him. "Where am I?" "Safe," he said. "For now." She tried to rise and winced, clutching her side. "What happened?" "Don't know. Found you by the old stage stop. No coach. No horses. Just you." She looked away, slow and cautious. Her hand moved toward her bag. He noticed. "I didn't take anything," he said simply. "You're a nurse." She nodded slowly. "Army volunteer. We were moving supplies to the fort in Riveting. Bandits hit us halfway through the valley." "Others with you?" She shook her head, eyes wet now. "All dead." Jacob looked away. "Names?" "I knew one. Corporal Hayes. The others were hired hands." Her voice cracked. "They didn't stand a chance." He stood. "You'll stay here. Until you're healed." "I can't." "You ain't got a choice," he said, more gently than it sounded. She narrowed her eyes. "Who are you?" He hesitated, then, "Jacob Hawthorne." That meant nothing to her. Or maybe it did. She studied his face, the scar that slashed across his cheek like a broken smile, the way he stood just a little too still. "You a bounty hunter?" she asked. "Not anymore." "Outlaw?" He didn't answer. "Soldier?" "Once." She nodded faintly. You talk like one. She tried again to rise. He moved fast and caught her before she fell, one arm strong around her shoulders. Their faces inches apart. Stubborn, he muttered. Don't need your help, she said, even as her breath trembled. Maybe not, he said, easing her back, but you've got it. She stared at him. Why? He paused for too long. Didn't feel right. Leaving someone behind. Her fingers gripped the blanket now, white-knuckled. They tied us up. The bandits. Said they'd sell us to the highest bidder. Jacob's jaw tightened. What changed? A rider. Someone spooked them. I got free. Ran. I guess I didn't get far. Jacob looked out the window. The plains stretched like a graveyard. They'll come looking. She closed her eyes. Then kill them first. He looked at her with something between respect and concern. Got a name? He asked finally. Hannah Montrose. Where you from? Maryland. Originally. He nodded. You've come a long way. I thought I could help out here, she said quietly. Heal something. Be useful. He looked at her then, not the cuts, not the dirt, but her eyes. You already are. She blinked, caught off guard. For a long moment neither spoke. That night Jacob sat outside under the stars, rifle across his lap. The land whispered in wind and creaking pine. He thought of her voice, trembling but brave. Of her saying, "Be useful." Of a time he believed that was possible for himself. Inside, Hannah lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She'd seen death, but never eyes like his, cold like a winter stream, but not dead. Not yet. She heard a wolf howl in the distance and shivered. Not from fear. In the morning, she tried to stand again. This time, he offered no help. Just watched. She managed 3 steps before crumbling. He caught her. Again. I told you. I know what you told me, she snapped. He grunted. Hard-headed. Do you always manhandle wounded women? Only the ones who argue while bleeding. She laughed softly. The sound surprised them both. She reached up, touching his cheek lightly. How'd you get that scar? He stiffened, then stepped back. Sleep. You'll need it. She watched him disappear out the door. The fire crackled in the hearth. Outside, clouds gathered. Inside, the distance between them shrank by inches. The war was over. But something else was beginning. Something slower, quieter, and infinitely more dangerous. The storm came in fast, the kind that rolled down from the mountains like a dark god come to scour the land clean. The air smelled of lightning and pine, and every branch in the hills creaked under the pressure of wind. Inside the cabin, Hannah pressed her hand against the window pane, watching the sky bruise purple and gray. Jacob worked at the hearth, feeding the fire, stacking what dry wood he had left. He moved with purpose, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't a man afraid of nature. This was a man who'd seen storms take lives. We'll ride out in the morning, he said without turning. Hannah glanced back at him. Ride out to where? He paused, his hand on the iron poker. Nearest outposts 4 days south. If we cut through the timberline, avoid the canyon. Won't they be watching the roads? His eyes met hers now. That's why we ain't taking them. Outside, thunder cracked sharp as a rifle shot. Hannah stepped back from the window. She hated the stillness before the worst of it. In field hospitals, that same silence came before a man's last breath. Now, it felt different, full of waiting, of choices yet to be made. Jacob secured the door, then turned toward her. You able to ride? I will be. He didn't question it. By midnight, the storm had them surrounded. Rain lashed the cabin, sneaking through the roof's cracks, tapping across the floor like the fingers of ghosts. Hannah helped him stuff rags into the window seams, her face tight with pain but determined. He watched her more than he admitted. You ever done this before? She asked, forcing a smile. Storm prep. Once or twice. She pulled her hair back into a tie. Feels like we're under siege. He almost laughed. In some ways, we are. Lightning lit the inside of the cabin for a split second. Hannah saw the outline of him. Broad, steady, older than the men she'd worked beside in the war, but heavier with memory. There was something about the way he watched the fire, like it owed him answers. "Tell me about Missouri," she said softly. His head turned. "You talk in your sleep." He stood quiet for a beat, then poured a tin cup of water and handed it to her. "I lost someone," he said. "I figured. My brother. Younger. Hothead. He enlisted to prove he wasn't scared." He sat across from her. "He died over a deck of cards and a bottle of stolen whiskey. Man shot him in the back before I could even stand." Hannah sipped slowly, eyes locked on his. "And you killed that man?" He didn't answer, but he didn't deny it. "I held a boy once," she said. "He was 17. Called for his mother for 3 hours before he bled out. I still hear it when I sleep too." Jacob nodded. Something shifted then. Not pity. Recognition. Shared weight. She looked down at her hands. "Why are you out here, Jacob?" "Because it's quieter than prison." The words hung between them, sharp as broken glass. But she didn't recoil. "Everyone's trying to escape something." That night, she fell asleep near the fire, her back to the hearth and the storm at her heels. Jacob watched her, rifle across his knees, the lightning flickering across her face like some old lantern memory. They left before sunrise, wrapped in oilskin, horses blanketed and packs strapped tight. The trail south was rough. Tree limbs down, mud up to the fetlocks, thunder still rumbling in the distance like a warning. Hannah rode behind Jacob on his gelding. At first, she was stiff, uncomfortable, uncertain, but he kept a hand firm on her knee, steadying her through the shifting weight of terrain. They didn't speak much. Words were unnecessary when the body screamed from pain and cold. By midday, the rain eased into a low mist. Pines closed around them, the world narrowing to a corridor of green and shadow. Jacob pointed ahead. "Stream's up there. We'll rest." They dismounted. Hannah stumbled, legs jelly from hours of stillness. Jacob caught her under the arm before she hit the dirt. "You're heavier than you look," he said. "I'll take that as a compliment," she replied, breathless. They knelt by the stream, filling canteens. She rinsed her face in the cold water, then sat back against a rock. "I don't think I've ever been this sore," she murmured. He chuckled. "You ain't seen sore until you've marched 30 miles on foot with trench rot. I'll take your word for it." There was a smile between them now. Not just politeness. Something honest. They camped that night beneath a granite overhang, fire flickering low, smoke swallowed by the trees. Jacob cooked beans in a dented tin, and Hannah hummed softly while wrapping her ankle. "What's the song?" he asked. "My mother's favorite. Old lullaby." "She's still alive?" Hannah shook her head. "Passed before the war. Typhoid. Took my father too." He looked at her, as if he could see the history in the set of her jaw. "You've buried a lot." "So have you." The fire popped and an owl hooted in the distance. He passed her the tin. "Eat." They sat in silence, passing the canteen back and forth. When sleep came, she curled near him without thought. The distance that had separated them now felt like a relic. In the early hours, horses startled. Jacob woke instantly, gun in hand. Hannah stirred beside him, alert but silent. Footstep. Branches. Not an animal. Jacob motioned for her to stay low. He moved through the trees, shadow among shadows. Voices. 2 men. Whispering. Searching. "She's out here somewhere. Boss says bring her alive this time." Jacob didn't hesitate. He stepped into the open, rifle raised. The first man turned just in time to see the flash. One shot, clean. The second spun and fired wild. Missed. Jacob dropped him with the second round. By the time Hannah reached him, breathless, Jacob was kneeling by the bodies. "Bandits." He nodded. "Scouting party." Her face paled. "They know we're alive," he said. "And they want you back." Her voice broke. "Then we can't stop again, can we?" "No," he said. Not anymore. They didn't bury the bodies. There wasn't time. They rode hard through the next valley, staying off the trails, weaving through gullies and dry creeks. Jacob pushed the pace, but kept checking Hannah. She didn't complain. Not once. At night, she whispered, "You could have left me." "I could have," he said. "But you didn't." "I didn't want to." Their eyes met through the half-dark. There was no fear there anymore. Just a question neither dared ask. The next day, they came across a cave, half covered by vines. It would give them shelter, Jacob decided. A place to rest, to plan. They unpacked inside. Jacob went to gather wood. Hannah remained by the fire ring, arms around her knees. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe. When Jacob returned, she stood and walked toward him. "I need to know something." He stopped. "If I hadn't been a nurse, if I'd just been someone lying in the dirt, would you still have saved me?" He stared at her. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I'm glad I did." She took a step closer. Her fingers reached up to the edge of his coat, lingered there. "So am I." Neither moved for a long time. When they finally did, it wasn't rushed or hungry. It was careful. A brushing of lips. A breath shared. A warmth that broke past the years they'd each spent building walls. Jacob pulled away first, just enough to see her. "We keep moving tomorrow." "I know. But tonight we rest." Hannah nodded, resting her head against his chest. The cave was quiet, the wind outside hollow and distant. The danger was far from over. But something had changed between them. They no longer traveled as strangers. And neither was running alone. The morning sun rose reluctantly behind a curtain of haze, smearing the sky in gray and dull gold. Hannah stirred against Jacob's side, her hand still resting where it had settled the night before, over his heart. He hadn't slept, not really. Rest came in pieces, as it always had. But her presence beside him was a warmth he hadn't known in years. They didn't speak much as they packed. Words had already been exchanged in silence. Trust was taking root now, not from grand gestures but from moments like these, shared coffee, side glances, unspoken care. He tied her pack to the saddle, double-checked the rifle, and nodded. She swung up behind him without complaint, her arms wrapping loosely around his waist. By mid-morning, the woods thickened, the trail becoming little more than a deer path tangled with brush. Birds fell silent as they moved deeper into a basin Jacob knew only from a map he'd once studied in a mining camp. It was a shortcut, but not without risk. Then came the sound, barely a whisper, a rustle off to the left. "Not animal." Jacob raised a fist. The horse stopped. Hannah tensed. She knew better than to speak. A figure emerged from the trees. Tall. Silent. Painted. The man said nothing. Bow in hand, obsidian blade at his side, he stared at them without blinking. Jacob slowly raised his hands, palm out. "We don't want trouble." The man didn't move. His gaze flicked to Hannah, then back to Jacob. "We're just passing through," Jacob said. "Avoiding worse men than us." Finally, the figure spoke. His voice was low, measured, wrapped in years of stillness. "Bandits come through here 2 nights ago. You bring them?" Jacob shook his head. "No. They're hunting her." The man stepped closer. Hannah could see now the age around his eyes, lines carved by time and weather, not weakness. There was wisdom in his stance, and sadness too. "You are Jacob Hawthorne," the man said. Jacob's eyes narrowed. "You know me?" He nodded once. "Your name follows blood." There was no threat in the statement. Just truth. Hannah slid off the horse, stepping between them before either could tense. "We're not looking to start anything. We just want to get south." The stranger looked at her. "You are not afraid." "I am," she replied. "Just too tired to show it." That made something twitch at the corner of his mouth. Almost a smile. "My name is Tala," he said at last. "Come. You'll be seen if you stay here." Jacob hesitated. Hannah didn't. She stepped forward. "We appreciate it." They followed him deep into a hollow where the trees grew thick and shadows stretched long. Tala moved like part of the land, as if he had never been anywhere else. Jacob kept one hand near his revolver, more out of habit than mistrust. But as time passed, the tension between the men eased, not with words, but with the rhythm of shared caution. They reached a small camp by a stream, half hidden behind boulders and tall grass. A fire pit covered with ash. A woven tarp stretched between trees. Tala gestured for them to sit. "I don't take in people," he said plainly. "Why take us?" Hannah asked. He looked at her for a long moment. "You were the only one who looked me in the eye." Jacob sat with a grunt. "You saved us back there. That arrow, was it you?" Tala nodded. "You were being hunted. Thought you might be worth the trouble." "Are we?" Hannah asked. "Not yet." That night they shared salted meat and root tea. Hannah helped wrap Tala's arm, where a scar showed fresh healing. He didn't flinch. She admired the quiet way he bore pain. Jacob watched her as she worked, the way she asked nothing and offered everything. She was still the battlefield nurse, the woman who stitched up broken things without asking how they got that way. After the meal, Jacob stepped away from the fire. Tala joined him, crouching nearby. "You changed," Tala said. "People say that like it's easy. It isn't. But you did." Jacob stared into the trees. "Only reason I'm not dead is her. She saved you." "Not yet. But she will." Tala nodded once, understanding more than words offered. Hannah and Jacob spent the next 2 days in Tala's hollow, planning a route south. The bandits would be scouring the main passes, so Tala offered to guide them through the old buffalo trails, paths only the oldest tribes remembered. Jacob agreed, grateful, though he didn't say the word out loud. On the 3rd day, Hannah woke early and wandered to the edge of the stream. Jacob followed, barefoot, boots in hand. She stood with the sun at her back, hair loose, dress torn at the hem. When she turned, her smile was soft, unsure. "I used to think I'd die alone," she said. "You won't," Jacob replied. She stepped close, hands sliding over his chest. "You were a storm when you found me. Cold, rough, unforgiving." He touched her face, traced the line of her jaw. "And now you're the shelter." Their kiss was slower this time. Not urgent, not desperate, but full of knowing. The kind that asks for nothing but offers everything. Later, back at camp, Tala glanced at them once. Said nothing. But his eyes were softer. That night, firelight danced across their faces as Jacob sat sharpening his blade and Hannah leaned against him. They were no longer just surviving. They were building something. Uneven, fragile, but real. Then Tala stood suddenly. "Horses," he said. Jacob was on his feet in seconds. Hannah ducked behind the stones. Tala notched an arrow. 3 riders emerged through the trees. Guns low, eyes sharp. Jacob stepped out first. "We don't want blood." The leader sneered. "Too bad. We were paid for it." One of them raised his rifle. Before he could fire, Tala's arrow buried itself in his shoulder. The man screamed, dropped the weapon. Gunfire erupted. Jacob shot the second rider clean through the chest. Hannah, heart racing, grabbed Jacob's second revolver and knelt behind the fire pit. When the leader charged forward, eyes wild, she fired. He fell, shot through the leg. Silence returned, swift and complete. Hannah stared at the revolver in her hand, breathing hard. "You all right?" Jacob called. She nodded. "I shot him." "Good," he said. "He was gonna shoot me." Tala was already checking the bodies. "Scouts. More will come." Jacob looked at Hannah. "We move tonight." She didn't argue. By midnight they were deep into the forest, following Tala's lead. No one spoke. Only the hoofbeats and the breathing of their horses filled the dark. When they finally stopped near a ridge, Hannah slid off and leaned against a tree. Jacob came to her side. "You killed a man today." She shook her head. "Just wounded him. Still takes something out of you." She looked up at him, pale in the moonlight. "No. It gave me something." He didn't understand. She smiled faintly. "It gave me you." He kissed her again, there in the dark. Neither of them saw Tala watching from the trees, his face unreadable. But he smiled, just once, before turning away. The bond had been forged. Not just between man and woman, but between survivors. And survival had a new meaning now. It was no longer just about living. It was about choosing what to live for. The outpost town came into view as the sun broke across the horizon, casting long golden fingers over rooftops warped by time and dust. Hannah tightened her grip around Jacob's waist as they rode into the edges of civilization, a place that looked no less dangerous than the wild behind them. Tired eyes followed them from shuttered windows. A blacksmith paused his hammer mid-swing. Even the stray dogs seemed to go still. Jacob dismounted first. His eyes scanned every alley, every creak in a door hinge. Hannah slid down after him, her legs unsteady but determined. Tala, silent as ever, brought up the rear, his horse barely making a sound. They walked straight to the doctor's building, a shack painted once blue now faded and chipped. Inside, a man in spectacles squinted at Hannah's bandaged ribs and gave a knowing nod. She insisted she was fine, but Jacob didn't leave until she agreed to rest on the cot near the back room. Tala remained at the door, watching the street like it had secrets yet to spill. Jacob stood over Hannah, awkward in the sterile calm. "You need anything?" he asked. She took his hand. "Don't leave." He looked away. "Got some things to see to. I won't be long." She nodded, trusting him without needing more. Outside, the wind had shifted. Something in the town's posture felt off. Not tense. Expectant. Jacob could feel it the way soldiers feel ambushes before they happen, just under the skin. He headed to the stable. The marshal's office sat across the road, a sagging building with a bent sign and a cracked window. Before he could enter the stable, the door behind him opened. "You Jacob Hawthorne?" He turned slowly. The marshal stood there, tall, lean, older, with a mustache gone gray and a badge dulled by years in the sun. One hand rested near his revolver, not threatening yet, but not idle either. "Depends who's the skin. I'm Marshal Ridley. I recognize your face. Or maybe it's your name. I heard over a dozen wanted posters. Missouri. 8 years ago. You were part of the Hollow Creek massacre." Jacob didn't move. "Wasn't a massacre. It was a bloodbath. But it wasn't mine." "That's so. I was there. I was just the last one to leave it." Marshal Ridley studied him. "You planning on running?" "No," Jacob said, surprising even himself. "I got someone here. Someone who deserves better than a trail of smoke behind her." Ridley nodded once. "You're not the man I expected." Jacob exhaled. "Neither am I." "Still," the marshal said, "I got rules. If I let you go now, I lose this town's respect." Jacob looked him in the eye. "Then don't let me go." The words fell heavy. "Let me earn it." The marshal hesitated, then motioned toward the jail. "Come on. We'll talk. But if you're lying—" "I'm not." That afternoon, Hannah awoke to the sound of boots on the floor and the whistle of the wind through the eaves. The doctor had gone. Tala was gone. And Jacob hadn't returned. She sat up slowly, pain buzzing under her ribs like a hornet's nest. Her instincts screamed. She found the marshal's office with little trouble. Inside, Jacob sat on the edge of a bunk, shirt sleeves rolled up, revolver absent. Hannah stood behind the bars. "What are you doing?" Jacob looked up. "Facing it." "Facing what?" "You saved lives. You've changed. Doesn't matter. Men like me don't get to walk away clean. But maybe I can stay somewhere long enough to make something right." She stared at him, heart pounding. "What about me?" His eyes softened. "That's the part that scares me." Footsteps thudded from outside. The marshal appeared, face dark. "Riders coming. 6 of 'em. Maybe more. Bandits." Jacob stood instantly. "It's them." Hannah turned to the marshal. "You need him." Ridley paused, jaw clenched, then unlocked the cell. "One chance, Hawthorne." Jacob grabbed his gun belt. Hannah stood beside him, armed now too. No hesitation. The townsfolk gathered. Doors barred. Windows shuttered. Tala reappeared from the shadows, his bow strung, arrows tucked beneath his arm like whispers waiting to be spoken. At the edge of town, the bandits appeared, leather-clad, dust-covered, laughing like the end had already come. The leader stepped forward. Same man who'd escaped Hannah's bullet. Scar across his cheek now stitched by rage. He called out, "Hand her over and we walk." Jacob stepped into view. "You'll walk into hell before I let you touch her again." The bandits raised their rifles. Gunfire cracked through the silence. Wood splintered. A window shattered. The townsfolk scattered, returning fire. Hannah ducked behind a wagon, revolver steady. Tala's arrows flew fast and silent, dropping 2 men before they knew they were dying. Jacob moved like a ghost, flanking left. He fired twice, hitting his mark each time. The scar-faced leader charged forward, screaming Hannah's name like a curse. She didn't run. He lunged, dragging her to the ground. Her gun skittered out of reach. His knife flashed. Then Jacob was there. He tackled the man, fists pounding, rage unspoken. They rolled through mud and broken glass, until Jacob pinned him, bloodied and breathless. The man laughed, spitting blood. "She ain't worth it." Jacob pressed the barrel of his revolver to the man's temple. "She's worth everything." The gunshot echoed through the town. When it was over, only 3 bandits remained. They fled into the hills, never looking back. The townspeople emerged slowly, wounded but alive. Fires smoldered. Blood painted the dust. Jacob sat beside Hannah on the porch steps of the general store, his hand wrapped in hers. Tala stood across the street, nodding once before disappearing into the trees without a word. Later that night, under the hush of stars, Hannah sat beside Jacob on the edge of town. His hat lay beside him, the wind teasing through his hair. "I thought I'd lose you," she said. "You almost did." She laid her head on his shoulder. "So what happens now?" "I don't know. Maybe I stand trial. Maybe they forget. But I'm done running." "You still want to leave?" He looked at her, eyes heavy but calm. "I don't want to be anywhere you're not." She smiled through her tears. "Then stay." He didn't answer with words, just kissed her, long and certain. In the days that followed, the town slowly returned to life. Jacob helped rebuild the blacksmith's door. Hannah volunteered at the doctor's shack. People began nodding at them in the street. The fear faded. One morning, the marshal approached Jacob at the edge of town. "No charges," he said simply. "Too many witnesses saw what you did." Jacob nodded. "Thank you." The marshal eyed Hannah in the distance. "You've got someone now. That changes a man." Jacob watched her too. It did. Hannah walked toward him, smiling. Jacob met her halfway. There were no promises spoken. No vows exchanged. Just a decision made quietly, irrevocably. This was their place now, not because it was safe, but because they had fought for it together. And because love had found them both at the edge of ruin, and led them home. Sometimes, fate rides in on a dust trail, unexpected but just in time. Jacob and Hannah were 2 broken souls from different worlds, a gunslinger and a nurse, brought together by danger, healed by love. If this story touched you, like, subscribe, and share with someone who believes in second chances. What would you do if you found someone fainted and alone on the frontier? Thanks for watching. Remember, the hardest roads often lead to the truest hearts.